Okay. I want to. I'm not. Do we have a class captain? Can they remind their colleagues? For those of you that are, your colleagues in the mentorship thing, please remind yourselves, and let's start in another 2 minutes. Thank you, Professor Ekundaya. Please just give us about 2 minutes. Let them remind themselves. Thank you. We only have four fellows here.
Good evening, Prof.
Evening,
Good
sir.
evening.
So sorry.
Thank you very much, ma. Yeah,
Thank you for having me.
thank you for coming, ma. Despite the change in schedule, thanks so much. Prof, I don't know. Should we start?
I think you should start. Please go ahead and start, please.
Okay. Yeah. Good evening. Thank you very much. Today is a special session because we're having it in the evening, and I think this is the first time we're having an evening session in the history of the Manuscript Writing Student Fellowship. And today's lecture is a special one. I'm sure you are all familiar with quantitative research, where you use numbers to assess or answer a question. But today we'll be looking at qualitative research that gives you a depth to the question you're answering. A quantitative research just gives you breadth. But you want to understand better, if you want to have the depth of your research, of your question, then qualitative research is the way to go. And we have no other person than Professor Ekundayo, who is a global expert in qualitative research, to take us, and she does her teaching in such a way that she ensures that you get all the message she passes across. She uses all the possible means of passing her message. So I'm sure you have a very educative session today. With that, Prof, I hand over to you. The mic is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Professor Hukman, Dr. Kudus Lawal. I appreciate you for inviting me once again today. It's been a very busy day for me, so please bear with me if my voice sounds tired. All right, so this evening, without wasting time, we want to quickly look at the fundamentals of qualitative research for qualitative researchers. Reason why I decided to title it this way is because I know most of us are used to qualitative research, and not all of us are used to qualitative research. So that's why it's important to put things in perspective and help us understand. So what is qualitative research? Qualitative research is unique because it gathers non-numerical data. You wonder, oh, so how do I then gather data? How do I then analyze? How do I then do my research if I'm not going to be using numbers? Well, welcome to qualitative research. It helps us understand people's realities, their opinions, their attitude, their belief, and their experiences. You want to understand someone's experience, probably growing up, what were your childhood experiences? It helps to give them the opportunity to say their stories, to tell us how they understand their own life trajectory, rather than when we have items on questionnaire that you have to choose from. But here we give them the mic. We allow them to be the king of the research. It also helps us to gather. It's also used when we want to gather contextual understanding of data that numericals can't translate. That it will be lost in numericals. There's no way I would be able to explain my childhood traumas if I do have in numbers, in strongly agree, disagree, I don't know kind of options. So it helps them to put things, it helps us to gather data from a deeper understanding of the respondent than just having to choose options. And lastly, it gives a depth, it helps us to explore depth of social phenomena that helps the researcher to connect with subjective experience of their respondents. So it's also important to know the differences between qualitative and quantitative, having explained. So here we want to understand what are the purpose or what's the purpose of qualitative as against that of quantitative, and what are the approaches used that makes them different. So for qualitative, most times, like I said, we focus on experiences, meanings that respondents wants to give, not the meanings that you think they should give, but the meanings that they want to give, the social context of their situation. It helps us to understand the complexity of individuals better than numericals. And for quantitative, most times we focus on, yes, the behavior, the attitude, but from numerical background of with using numericals, using numbers to understand our data. And then we'll also analyze that way. It's said that it's easy to generalize from quantitative because you have such a number of persons that you've asked questions from, and then you are not going so deep into the understanding of that context of that or that phenomena or phenomenon. All you want to do is just understand it as it comes and then give numbers to it. So as you go on your Likert scale, you have 1 to 5, and then you give, okay, you strongly agree, you decide it's going to be 5 depending on your scoring format. So you decide strongly agree is going to be 5, while strongly disagree is going to be 1. Or if you decide the other way, depending, like I said, on your high item, the formulation of your question items, then you could also have it in the reverse form where you have the strongly disagree as 5 and then strongly agree as, the other way. I can't remember how I said this initially. So that is one way or to understand the purpose. Now, when it comes to research question, one way to understand the differences is to look at the research question. For qualitative, research question goes beyond the what. For quantitative, is most times about what, how much, how often, because you need to give numbers. So what, how much means that you give numbers. How often means you tell us, of course, how often, every day, every week, every month, and those can easily be quantified. But in qualitative, you want to do more with how and why. What's the reason behind why you did what you did? Or what is the reason, how do you experience this? How, not what do you experience. In quantitative, you want to understand what do you experience, or what is the relationship between this that you experience and this other thing. For instance, what's the relationship between being a dental student and academic performance, or what's the relationship between your social life and your academic performance. But in qualitative, you don't necessarily want to find a relationship. You just want to understand that situation deep. You want to understand it contextually. You want to understand the meanings that each student gives to their own experience. So you'll be asking, how do you experience your social life? Well, of course, that's broad. That's not how to go about it. But you are wanting to know, how do you experience whatever you're going through, or why do you experience it? And then another way to know the difference is to look at the data collection method. How do you gather data? And quantitative, mostly, if you've listened to me, if you followed me, you understand that you are using a questionnaire. You have a survey, you want to do survey, and they're going to be using either a questionnaire. Sometimes you could do experiments. So you have hypothesis to test. You have hypothesis to test. If this will strongly be related or strongly predict or strongly influence B. A will strongly influence B, or will significantly influence B. So you either accept your hypothesis or you reject your hypothesis. That is in quantitative. In qualitative, we don't have hypothesis. We only have objectives. And you are supposed to do interviews. You're not testing hypothesis. You're not testing. You're just seeking to know or to answer the objective. And then you, most times, you'll be using interviews. You do focus group discussions. You do observation. You can do what we call document analysis, where you look at text, scriptural text, letters, case notes, hospital case notes, police case files, and things like that. Whatever has to do with text, messages written over time. You could decide to see notes of your classmates from their part 1 to part 4. I don't know, whatever you want to look at, their experience in school as dental students, their experience in school as medical students. So you want to check how their notes, maybe notes and their experiences in school, or notes how they write with their academic performance. Something interesting. So it's mostly you're going to be doing text analysis. So that is another way to differentiate between quantitative and qualitative method. Another way is to look at sampling methods, or sampling ways we sample. For quantitative, we usually would use a very large number, except when you do experiments. Experiments, you don't most times do very large number, but most times we do large numbers. We want to generalize to the population that we are interested in. While in qualitative, you usually will use small numbers. It's never probabilistic sampling method, because there's no way you can do randomization in most of the things you are interested in. The most times you often will be purposive your selection of your respondent. For instance, you want to select, you want to do the like I've been using, you want to do the study on experiences of dental students. Number one is purposive. You have to use a dental student, or you have to use dental students, or you there will be those who will be interested, or those that you know that would know about what you want to say and are interested in doing. So most times you're purposive. If you're not purposive, you're doing snowballing, which is, you know, the first person, but you're not sure of other respondents. So one person leads you to the other, and another, and another. So those are the differences. The sampling method differs. We move on to the next, which is the data analysis style. Of course, it differs. You know that by the time you gather data in quantitative, you are gathering numbers, you are gathering numerical data. And obviously, you'll be analyzing using tools that would have to analyze numbers. You'll be doing univariate regression, logistic regression, pathway analysis. You could do structural equation modeling. Those are things that you can do chi-square, you can do t-test, because you want to look at test of difference, one number from the other. How do they differ from each other? But in qualitative, we don't use number. Like I've been saying since the beginning of this class, we do not do lots of numbers. So we do analysis of the words, the text, the voice notes that that person has, the recordings of the interview, the pictures. Now we do pictures analysis, you do video analysis, and the likes. And you transcribe, you do your analysis, and you could do narrative, you could do case study. As we go on, we understand that. So, but the main thing is, in their analysis style differs, or the way we analyze data differs from quantitative to qualitative. Now we look at the software that can be used. Their software differs, except for MaskQDA that has software that could do for quantitative analysis and also do for qualitative analysis. As I start, they differ in their in the software. So for qualitative, we have the NVivo, DDoS, the Atlas TI, MaskQDA minor, QDA minor. There are a lot of them. And as you all know, or you are aware, that in quantitative we have SPSS, we have Stata, we have Python, we have R, we have Excel, the basic Excel, MS Excel, and the likes. So those are the softwares that are available. Now, another way that we can differentiate that would help us understand when we see them is to know, how do we interpret our data? Now we've analyzed our data, we've used software. How do we interpret this data? For quantitative, most times we have our interpretations in charts, in tables, in graphs. We do, like I said, hypothesis rejection and acceptance. But in qualitative, we do a lot of narrative. It's narrative in nature. Sometimes nowadays we do a lot of visualization. So before, it used to be a lot of quotes. So you have a lot of excerpts. This person A said this and is buttressed by, and these are the explanation, and then B is saying this, emphasizing what A has said, blah blah blah. And but nowadays we have a lot of visualizations based on the involvement of qualitative research methods. So we have lots of style. You could do word cloud. Word cloud is something anybody could do. In fact, without any on your MS Word, you could do a word cloud just to find what word comes out strongly in your transcript. So just find, and then it brings out this and says maybe finance. What affects students most when it comes to settling down in school. So the first thing that comes is finance or relationship. Boyfriend jilts you or girlfriend leaves you behind, and such things you could easily do with word cloud. So it pops the most significant word, or the word that has the most that's been used the most in that conversation comes out strongly, comes out the boldest. And then we also do charts, we'll do what we call Sonke diagram and the likes. So those are ways that we do our interpretation. Also, we have what we call the validity and the reliability in quantitative. In qualitative, of course, quantitative, you know that there's reliability and validity. So you do content reliability, you do construct, you do face validity, you do blah blah blah, validity and reliability, just to be sure that what you have used, is valid and your instrument is valid and reliable. If used again and again, it gets the same type of data. Now, in qualitative, it's we have similar ways of testing for reliability and validity. So you don't just sit and feel that, oh, it's only quantitative that is rigorous. Qualitative, just do excerpts, just put words. No, there are steps to take. So validity and reliability is one of the ways. It means that your process is trustworthy and then is consistent. If done again and again, we are going to find the same results or similar results if I follow the step that you follow. Your work is reliable, is credible, is transferable, is dependable, is confirmable. And then now that we know both, how can we do mixed method? I like to state that most times when people say they do mixed method, I find it funny because most times they do a lot of quantitative, and then they now had like a spoon, so it's like a bucket of or a whole pot of quantitative and then a teaspoon of qualitative, and then I say it's mixed method. So please note that if you are doing mixed method, it should indeed be mixed method. It should, whatever attention you are going to be giving to quantitative in your research, you should also give to qualitative. Whatever process that you say you went through for quantitative, you should have a similar way of stating all your processes in your qualitative method. So it's usually to have a triangulation of data to make things better, to have to say a stronger to make a stronger statement. That's when we most times use mixed method. But unfortunately, nowadays people use mixed method because they do not know. So they think they're just triangulating. So they have quantity up and then they have qualitative at the back, and then it's just to say, oh, qualitative supports what quantitative said. No, is usually not done that way. It's to bring out beauty of both so that you can have a fuller picture of what you are researching. What are the types? Now we're going deeper into qualitative research. What are the types of qualitative research methods that we have? We have the interview, excuse me, we have focus group discussion, we have observation, and then we have the documents or text analysis, just like I said before. So quickly, let's look at what interviews are. What are interviews? Interviews involves oral questioning of your respondents. You ask open-ended questions, not closed. Closed are questions like, let's say, where you have yes or no responses. Do you like rice? Yes. No. Do you like the weather today? No. Questions that are close-ended or that gives you responses that you know that the type of responses expected of you are already suggested. But for open-ended questions, there are questions that allow the participants to talk about their views, their feelings, their experiences, and their stories on whatever we are researching. So it's important to help our respondents to ask questions that are going to be that allow them. It takes time to learn how to ask open-ended questions, but as you go on and look for experts or you read more about questioning, you would understand how to ask open-ended questions that will make your respondent talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. And then you also probe. So you're allowed to probe again and ask, oh, okay. Oh, you said the weather was warm today, or it was gloomy, or it was raining. Oh, so you mean you do not like raining days? Oh, then it talks again about his or her experience about raining days, or how rainy days can be annoying, makes you sleep, it makes you lazy, blah 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 blah. So we ask open-ended questions when we do interview. Now there are two types of interview. There are mainly two types of interviews conducted in qualitative research. We have the key informant interview and the in-depth interview. So what do we do when we say we do key informant interview? When from the word key informant, it means that you're actually looking for the key informant, meaning you're looking for experts in your research phenomena. For instance, you are interested in surgeons, I don't know their names, but permit me as I use this example. You are interested in surgeons who work on dental surgeons who work on children for oral cavity, something like that. And then you won't go and ask questions from children or parents whose children do not have cavity problems. You wouldn't go to just a dentist to ask questions. You will go to the expert to ask such questions. So when we say we are doing key informant interviews, it means that you're asking the most knowledgeable person, the most important person in that field, in that situation, in that issue. For instance, you want to ask questions about the sexually marginalized. You won't be asking lecturers. You'll be asking those who are indeed been marginalized, the lesbians, the gays that you know around you. So you're asking questions from the experts. And then most times you do this type of interview because you need to identify a potential problem. You want to dig deeper than just fixing a problem, but you want to identify a potential problem. And then you have less time to administer the interview. You know, if you for in-depth, don't let me compare now, but if you just want to ask questions, you have time, so you have lots of interesting things to ask questions on, then you could do the in-depth interview because you have the time. But when you have less time, you just want to go to those that you know are the experts and then ask questions from them. And then the disadvantage is usually not a true representation of your population because you have just asked from those who are knowledgeable. So you might not, it might not represent the true picture of the society or the community. Now for in-depth interview, you can ask anybody. You just want to ask questions around, oh, so you could ask a dentist, you could ask a nurse, you could ask a caregiver. You could just ask questions randomly from anybody. But you know they know, but not as the expert will give you. So in-depth interview usually is to fix a problem. Just there's a problem around that it already has been identified that you want to fix, then you do in-depth interview. For in-depth interview, more persons to interview, so needs more time. You need a lot of time as against the in-depth key informant, and usually it's a better representation of your society. So moving on from interview, you go into observation, and you see that I have observation and or ethnographic study. Reason being that usually observation is on one end, while ethnography is on the other end of the continuum. So if you have a continuum of 1 to 10, you'll say that observation might be on the 1, while ethnography is on the other. And what I mean is observation is the more of an insider that is like driving into a situation. So at the beginning is is observation. At the end is ethnographic study. So if you are driving into this estate of knowledge, of a situation, of a phenomenon, at the beginning is observation, meaning that you are just there. So the more you enter into it, then you go into participatory observation, and then you enter into ethnography. So the more you enter into that situation, the more you enter into ethnography. So let me explain this way. Just like I have glasses, something to observe. You observe your senses. When we say we observe with the eyes, the ears, the nose, the taste, the feel on the skin. You can observe the weather with how warm it is on your skin, not necessarily how you see it on your with your eyes, but how you feel the warmth um of the environment on your skin. So observation is by senses. Now, the more so you could just have the physical, the sensual observation. That is at the one, that will be on the continuum of one. But as you go in, you become a participant in your observation. You are moving towards 5. And then from that, you move into ethnography, where you become a submerged insider. You are part of the process. You are enjoying not just seeing, but you understand deeper than just seeing. Then you have entered into ethnographic study. Then we have focus group discussion. What do we do? Of course, most of us are used to interviews and focus group discussions. So, I had a focus group discussion yesterday. So in focus group discussion, what do we do? From the diagram here, you see that people are seated together to discuss a particular thing. So there's the interviewer, and then we have the people around to supply the responses. Usually, there are styles of sitting in focus group discussion. That's discussion for another day. But in this one, we have the circular style where everybody sees themselves. So you can't hide, you can't hide, you can't run away. The interviewer can read your body language easily, and then you know that you are involved. You are part of the conversation. Sometimes you could have the rectangular, you could have the classroom style of interview of focus group. Those have advantages and disadvantages, but usually the circular is the most preferred, because it's like a round table discussion where you are involved as I am. That is for focus group discussion. And what we do here is we want people to talk about, usually focus group discussion is mostly about cultural norms. It's about a society. It's about a society, a social norm, a cultural norm. You want to understand not just one person, you want to understand the culture. And when I say culture, culture is not necessarily from the sociological view alone. It could just be this, you could understand the culture of your classroom. You want to understand the social dynamics of your classroom, the social dynamics of a situation. Then focus group discussion is the way to go. It helps you to give people stories and allow them react. So usually you might not be asking direct questions about their own life, but you are asking about what they think the society does. How does society give them, what are their reactions to some things within the society. Usually we have 2 persons who conduct focus group discussion. You have the moderator, that is the interviewer, and then you have a note taker that helps you to remember who was saying what was the social dynamics or the group dynamics of the class. So he or she starts to take note of what the class is. Usually, a focus group discussion should be between 6 and 12. 6, in fact, nowadays some are arguing for 4, but it depends on what you are researching. But usually you don't want a large group where people are not given opportunities to hear their own view. So it's important to have a class where you can manage the dynamics of the class. So when do we use focus group discussion? I think I've mentioned this. It's a time when you want to formulate research questions for a more structured, a larger survey. There's something in the society that you are not sure you understand yet. It's better to start with focus group discussion. They help you put things in perspective before you go into your larger survey, especially when you want to develop your own research instruments, your own questionnaire. Start with a focus group discussion if you're doing survey but start with it helps you to understand this. If you're doing social group or cultural norms, but if you're doing individual based research, then you can start with interviews. It helps you to understand that phenomena that you're interested in first before you then go and develop your own skill or your own instrument and then go on for survey. Please mute yourself if you are the one. All right, so then we move on to the next, which is to understand and solve unexpected problems in your intervention. And there's sometimes when you want to develop appropriate message for health education programs, and when you want to explore controversial topics. Now, what are the differences quickly? The differences are for focus group discussion, like I said, is about the group, it's about societal norms, it's about community. For interview, it's about individual experiences and options, and opinions and feelings. For focus group discussion, you want to understand opinions about groups again. You want to discover variety within a population. It's just about groups. It's about groups. Then for interview, it's usually about sensitive topics. You want to understand in-depth responses about with nuances and contradictions. Then you go for interviews, and then you want to elicit interpretive connection and relationship a person sees between events. Then we go for interviews. Now, how do we capture our qualitative data? From what we've said so far, we've been asking questions, we've been probably recording this conversation, we've been taking field notes. Remember, I talked about a note taker. Somebody has been taking notes. Somebody has been recording. Somebody has been asking questions. Somebody has been responding. Possibly sometimes you do videos, you do pictures, and then all of this you have to transcribe into data. Yes, I've recorded voice. How do I make sense of this voice? How do I start to work with voice analysis? Then you transcribe your data set. So that's conversion of speech to text. And by this, it means you are writing. Before, it used to be digital ways. You listen, you write out, you listen. But thankfully, now there's artificial intelligence and technology is helping a lot. So your artificial intelligence listens for you and then write out your transcripts. For instance, you've done your interview on Zoom or on your phone, and then you put it back and your AI, as we're having the conversation, just like we've been in this class, there's a transcription done already. And after this class, we can take this transcription and then start to work on it. Now, obviously, sometimes you don't need all of these forms of transcription, but I'll quickly go over it for time. We have the verbatim where you do the transcription with all the interruptions, the harms, the pauses, all that is said, relevant, irrelevant, would be transcribed. The baby was crying, you must transcribe the baby's tears or sobs. How you just write baby sobbing for some time. So like that. But for intelligent verbatim is you have a more readable text where you've removed all the pauses, especially if you're not doing anything that has to do with um um emotional phenomenon. You're not interested in emotions, but if you are working on something that has to do with emotions, it has to do with trauma, people's childhood experiences, then you would need the emotions to interpret. But generally, we do intelligent verbatim, or you do edited. Edited is the very edited version of, so you make it sound, you don't do pidgin, you don't do bad English, you don't do Nigerian English. So you do the correct way things are said or should be said. So probably the interview, the respondent has used could where it should have done can. Then you have to edit to sound can, not could. That way, you have done a lot of edited version of the intelligent verbatim. And lastly is the phonetics, where you use I love to use Yoruba. In this instance, you've done your interview in traditional or in your dialect, and then you need, of course, you need to understand that dialect a lot to be able to transcribe in the first place, before to be able to translate to transcribe. So you will need to bring up your phonetics here, and it means, for instance, you've done igba. Igba is color, igba is garden egg, igba is 200, igba is time, and sorts like that. And then even in English, there are ways things are pronounced. For instance, somebody says route and route. You have to be sure which is being interpreted or transcribed when you are transcribing. So the root, is it R-O-O-T, or is it route? The same route, R-O-U-T-E, can be pronounced as Ruth if you are speaking British English or American English. So you have to be careful when you have such situation. Now we've transcribed our data, we want to code, we want to start the coding process. So there are two forms of coding strategy or coding approaches. We do the inductive coding. I have to speed up. We do the inductive coding and we do the deductive coding. So for inductive coding, you're doing the ground up approach, meaning that when you go to the field, you didn't have your preconceived ideas. You just went to the field with your objectives. So you allowed your raw data to do the guidance. Your raw data speaks strictly to you, and then you write out or you interpret, you start to analyze. But in the other form, which is the deductive coding, you have the top-down approach where your research question formed your teams, and from your teams, you had your questions before you go to the field. You already had your preconceived teams, and then you tease out your preconceived teams from your data. And that is a pictorial depiction here. And then lastly, we would look at the quantitative research designs. What are the forms of research designs that we have? We have 5 types here. We have the phenomenological approach, we have the ethnographic approach, we have the narrative approach, the case study, and then grounded theory. For phenomenological approach, next week we'll go over, or the next class will go over this strongly. But for the phenomenological approach, we have the 3 types. We have the emotive phenomenological approach, and then we have the interpretative phenomenological approach, and then we have the transcendental phenomenological approach. And then from that, we have other approaches, the ethnography, the narrative approach, case study approach, and grounded theory approach. So please note that when you say you're doing either mixed method or strictly qualitative research design, one thing that people are never sure of, or not sure of until very recently, is that there are research designs in qualitative approach, and each of these designs have how to go about it. You don't just sit in your room and say, oh, I love that phenomenological approach. It sounds serious. It sounds interesting. Therefore, I would rather choose phenomenology so that my audience or my supervisor can be sure that that boy or that girl is very intelligent because of the word phenomenological approach. Or case study sounds like it. Or let me say grounded theory, because it sounds like theory. like I'm theorizing something, then we just choose it. No, there are assumptions behind each of them, and we'll go over this next week or next class, God willing. So thank you very, very much for listening. We'll give room for question and answer. We have 15 minutes to go. Thank you very much. Over to you, Dr. Kudus Lawal.
Thank you very much, Prof. I'm sure the students have jotted a lot and are excited to start doing qualitative research. I'm sure we'll have questions or clarification to be made. So if you have questions, use your electronic hand so that you can be called upon.
Thank you so much, actually, Professor Ekundaya, for always making it easy. And of course, each time I listen to you, there's something always new to reinforce, if not to learn. For the students, I know you might be um, quiet now, but please do reflect. I can assure you, for being in biomedical sciences, we're not used to doing qualitative, but it is extremely powerful. For those that are going into research, going into the years ahead, and you're working in Q1, Q2 journal, there's no way you would not strengthen the piece of work by understanding the principles surrounding qualitative research. I started working in qualitative research after working with my research partner, who is in Irvine, University of California, Irvine, before she no, University of something, and then she moved to California. You know, when she writes, it's so brilliant, but she doesn't write in one year, but she will take 10 years before she writes something. But when she writes, I'll be reading, how can somebody imagine? How can somebody think like this? It is depth. It is not surface.
Wow.
It is depth. It is critical thinking. It's brilliance at its best. And that's for that reason I give kudos to social scientists. It's, but you can't think like that on the run. So learn this tool. This is the future. This is the future that is going. If you, as a biomedical researcher, can enhance and understand the critical and thinking and depth that comes from qualitative research, there's no way you would fly. Your first paper can even be a major breakthrough for you. They will invite you. So I appreciate that there might not be many questions now, but you will be having your next lecture, and I will be expecting questions at your next lecture, because you should have set things in and then start to think about what it means for you to apply this on the field. I really thank you, Okpa, for always being here and for your brilliance. Of course, we'll be back. There's no point saying we won't be back. We'll always be back as we expand our piece of work that we do. Thank you so much. I heard from your voice that you're tired, obviously. And well done for I see that there's a call for the journal from the Institute. I truly wish you well as you put this together. Over to you, Kudus. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Prof. I mean, there are lots to take from the lecture, and as Prof has rightly said, it may seem overwhelming now. So you take your time to revise and go through the recordings, try and reflect on the teachings. Then when we meet next week, I'm sure you have questions to ask and clarification. With that, I think I'll give you 10 minutes of your time back for the evening. Okay, there's a chat on the box. Oh, just appreciation. All right, thank you. So with that, say thank you very much for joining. We'll meet next week, Saturday morning. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.